Hello and welcome to Moreness-Culture. Good morning, Syl.
Good morning, wonderful Beena. Good morning, good
Good
morning.
morning, Green, and good morning, everyone who is going to join us live and will watch us recorded later. You all are most welcome to this morning space that has created for us. And this is a place where, again, I'm not going to quit saying that, and because this is something I'm doing it for myself, that this is a place Syl has created for us where we can be, of course, ourselves and we can aspire to be more, all caps more. And it's a privilege, it's an opportunity, it's a blessing, whatever vocabulary you want to use it, because I don't think so that we can find anywhere, usually anywhere in around us, where we can not only be ourselves, but we can aspire to be more. We are encouraged to be more. We are appreciated to be more. We are celebrated to be more. This is a place where you can do all, you can get all these superlatives of life, good characteristics of life. We are trying our best to share that. And yesterday something happened. One of our almost, okay, I don't know, I cannot say regular because it's a new someone new there uh, on YouTube, and they made a profound comment there. And of course,
Beena,
I,
to interrupt you
yes.
before you talk about the profound comment, I don't think we live.
Oh wow,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, I don't think so because
I'm seeing that custom live streaming service recording, but I don't know if we are live or not. But
well,
okay.
look on Facebook. Look on Facebook. That's not easiest place to see. I don't know. Everything is just all strange.
Everything is so interestingly different. Yes, we are live, so
Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, keep going then. Keep going.
okay.
Okay.
I'm going to just yes, we are live anyway. So what I was keen to share with that someone made a comment, and it is not just a comment. Again, it's a gesture. Because comment is something like, okay, you can do it like, oh yeah, I like it. Okay, yes, good. A heart sign, anything can. They are also valuable, definitely valuable. But when you go beyond that, when you put some effort, when you invest your energy and your attention, then it's a gesture. Like you are doing something, going beyond needed, going beyond just the regular. And that gesture from a viewer on YouTube, they mentioned that, okay, yes, they were appreciating us, they were acknowledging it. That was, of course, wonderful, and we are so grateful, so happy for that. But it was more than that, because they mentioned that they had a worldview collapse. One of the worldview collapse they had. I don't know how many other, but because it happens many times on, or actually on regular basis with everyone. But one of the profound or the most monumental kind of a worldview collapse happened decades ago, and in that it was lack of awareness, of course, because something is happening to you. You know that something is not exactly as you were assuming it is. It could be about your idea about your belief system, it could be about your personal existence as human being, it could be about any other system, it could be about any other established norms and all these things. So something happened, something profound, something monumental happened to them. And because, of course, the, the the lack of awareness that what it is, what's happening, and lack of replacement makes it a huge
That
problem for them.
especially.
Yes, because when you don't have a replacement, you don't know where to go. Yes, it is like an acrobats when they are on swings, right, really up high in the sky, and when they have to leave the swing they were on, but they don't have the other one to grab on, to be
The
there.
void. They're in the void
This is the
transition.
void. And being in void, when you don't have a ground under your feet, when you don't have anything to grab on, to just stay on, it's a chaos. It's a problem. It's a
Scary.
big, huge problem. It's really miserable because you don't know where to go. Yes, you have left that. It is not working anymore. I have to leave that. Whatever was established as an ideas, as ideas, as perceptions, as my understanding, as my awareness, and it's not working anymore. But now what?
Yeah.
That's a real struggle in life. You can't be in more miserable situation than this, that you don't have anything to really just be there. Just put your feet on and like, no. And that was a problem they gone through. Of course, I don't know. They were not, of course, they didn't share much details, but I can understand that having nothing to be there is just have being in void, and void is an awareness, the real materialization of unawareness. The epitome of unawareness is in void. Of course,
Well,
it is full of possibilities. It can be, but when you have someone or something to be, to look for, to look up to, when you have someone around you in your access, and they can share, of course, other understanding, different perspectives, the replacement, then it's all easy breezy. But if you don't have that, then it's a problem. Then it's a huge problem, because again, you have to go through all the hit and try method, and then of course like try to figure out if something is not working, then it has to be something. There has to be something to
yeah,
really work. And then when you have no understanding, no real understanding of something, then you have to try it. Okay, yes, just releasing a small bubble, popping it up, and now I have to create another bubble. Okay, and then of course this it is going to be or not going to be to last very long, for very long. So then you have to create something. And it's a big, huge process. Syl went through that in a different way, because he was aware of it. That lack of replacement is the
yeah,
most miserable situation for anyone in life.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Leaving something is
Oh,
not a problem.
oh,
Not
yeah.
having a replacement is a huge
Yeah.
deal.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a huge deal. And
Oh,
this person gone through that, and they were saying that, okay, now you are making, of course they included me also, thank you so much for that. They were saying that, okay, so now you are, by sharing, by capital S
so let
sharing, the
Beena,
way,
we are me.
oh yes, okay, so the way they are sharing, the way you guys are sharing, you are making it normal, that yes, it is going to happen, because otherwise it's a big blow for your ego. Oh, I was doing these things in this particular way. This is how I was understanding. This was my choice. This was my decision. And when you say that, okay, the worldview collapse, no, things are not working the way I was assuming, the way I was doing. And then you don't have a replacement. It's a big, huge deal. Nobody
And
actually,
what is the replacement that we are providing,
yes,
Beena?
I'm going here, but mostly people
Ah,
don't talk about, it's overly romanticized. Sorry to say, but it's overly
yeah,
romanticized, the
yeah,
term transformation. Oh, I'm going through a transformation. Oh, I'm going to be a butterfly or becoming a beautiful white swan. But you don't know that, okay, how it is going to happen. And when you, especially when you don't have a replacement, when you don't have an understanding of replacement, that how it is going to be, then it's a horrible situation to be in. And this is what they were going through. And making it normal, that yes, it is part of the deal. You are not alone. You are not wrong. You are not broken. You are not messed up. This understanding, making it normal, is a huge deal. Sorry, sir, I
you just
think
need to
I
learn.
yes.
Need to
Okay.
learn. That's all.
Yes, but now you're saying it like, oh, you need to learn. But still, imagine when
I
someone
know, I
don't
know,
have
I know,
someone.
I know.
Yes. So, so
When you're lost, you don't know anything, and it's everything is
exactly,
difficult. Everything is
exactly,
complicated. Yeah,
exactly. And then you, of course, you get into trouble by, of course, having resentment towards everything. Like, oh yes, okay, I'm the only one who is going through all these things, and everyone else is right. Okay, everyone else is happy, and then you get into negativity towards yourself, that I'm not enough. This I'm not enough. Because I don't know. I don't know means that, okay, I'm foolish, I'm stupid. And it's a huge negativity towards ourselves. A lot of things happened when you don't have a replacement. Having a replacement It's like, oh yes, now someone is just saying that, okay, it's a transit flight. You walk through that, and now just be on this plane, and then you will get to your destination. Easy breezy, no problem. But if you don't have, then you are a lost person. And this is what they
Isn't
were
that
sharing.
amazing? Isn't that
Oh
amazing?
yes. So I hope that everything is done.
I'm just trying to get TikTok to work, but
Okay, okay, okay,
no. Go ahead. We're ready. If it doesn't work, it doesn't. Too bad.
okay. Yes.
It's too bad. TikTok is its own weirdness. Its own weirdness. All right. Let's. I don't know where my file is.
Okay, so what we are doing busy, for any new viewers, what we are busy, like we are busy with, we are doing capital R reading of Carlos Castaneda's books about Don Juan, with a very specific intent to connect with Don Juan, to connect with the intent of sharing at that time, and how they were sharing, what they were doing, and what was the bigger and abstract point of view, perspective on all those things. And Syl is providing us the context. I read a comment from of course, our friend Joseph. He made a comment that, okay, the problem with this, that because we always emphasize on the abstract concept and the concept of sharing, capital S sharing from Don Juan. So it was like that Joseph was saying that you can, the problem with this, that sometimes this point get overlooked in this whole discussion, that you cannot connect with medicinal spirits or plant spirits without going through those process of ingesting mushrooms or different plants. And yes, I agree that yes, you cannot connect with that, but it doesn't mean that you cannot understand what those spirits wants to share and their existence.
Exactly.
Because
And the
yes, so
point of it, where
here,
you want to go in the overall, that's one path.
exactly.
Don't have
Yes,
to
that's one
always
part.
go right.
Yes,
There's many different routes to get to a destination.
exactly.
And
Yes, if our destination, if our goal, if our aim is just to connect with the spirits, plant spirits specifically, then of course people can choose that, and then of course
yeah,
they have to go through that process. But
right.
if their intent is to connect with the overall spiritual world, having the understanding of the different reality, multiple realities, then it's a different deal. Then they don't need to. They can,
Yeah.
of course, but they don't need to.
Right.
Because once you understand the abstract understanding of all these things, then you really know that what's the point of it? Just to prove, again, this is my understanding, I feel that what Don Juan was proving by just initiating this thing as a first point, as a first step towards that he was establishing the understanding in Carlos' mind that there are more realities existing. There are more,
Yeah.
something more what you have been really seeing and perceiving. So this was the first step. Again, most profound, again, very valuable. And of course, some people choose to stay there. Some just want to acknowledge and, of course, understand the abstract understanding and then move on. Yes, why not a person can be Don Juan? Why to just be Carlos or Don Gennaro
Exactly.
or be
Exactly.
more
You know,
or be more?
you exactly. You bring up a huge point. When I read the books first, and they came at the end of my big reading project of reading all the classics, I didn't get to discuss those books with anybody. Well, with one exception, but
Mhm.
not anybody outside my immediate circle. And for decades, it just wasn't viable. It just wasn't possible.
Mhm.
Um, it was really interesting because the climate didn't allow for it, and the environment. Anyway, and when I did much later, when it came, and when I started seeing stuff online and all this, which came much later. But when I did discuss with people, this was before internet time. They would always express their desire to be Carlos. It always puzzled me. Why on earth would you want to be Carlos? They didn't think about it. Well, then I'll be the apprentice to Don Juan, etc. Why wouldn't you aspire to be Don Juan or Don Gennaro or one of the members of his party? Just fascinated me. Yeah. Anyway, just my brain working differently, I guess. Yeah. Just seemed like a duh to me that if you're going to be
Yes.
aspired to something, and you have to be careful of your size. I mean, I understand that they're not wanting to be Carlos himself necessarily. They want to be an apprentice, but they don't think about what they say, and they don't think about their intent. Right? They're expressing an intent to be Carlos, and well,
At
be
some
careful. You get
point,
your intent fulfilled. Right?
yes, if we go through all
Yeah.
the thing, like okay, Carlos and then Don Juan and then Don Gennaro, and of course it is going to be a big huge chain before that too.
Yeah.
So if we go
Yeah.
through the lineage, at some point someone started all these things. Exactly a human
Right.
like me and you, and of course all others.
Right. Right.
Then he or she or they actually they explored something which was completely new, and they
Right.
started as a new. This
Right.
is a reality. This is a fact. At some
Yeah.
point, someone is, of course, going through that. We have a story here. Okay, a short story. Again, I'm just sharing as a purpose of a story, interesting story, not for any religious context. So, according to some religious understanding here, people say that when Abraham was trying to explore things, and sorry, Adam was exploring things, because according to Islamic understanding, he was also a prophet. So some people say that it's not
Yeah.
like a part and class
Interesting.
thing, but
Interesting.
it doesn't
Yeah, it
change
doesn't
the
matter for the
reality.
purpose of the story. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
it was like, okay. So when he was trying to understand that how this whole system, the world is working, so exploring everything was part of the deal. So in the morning when he saw the sun coming, then he say, oh, that glorious magnificent thing shining all over like the whole world around me, and it brighten up and changes. For him it was change, to change everything. This must be the power, this must be the ultimate power who created all these things, and that we must be the god. And then at the sunset, it was like, okay, now no more. Okay, if the ultimate thing actually, that the criteria of ultimateness connected to the God idea he had was like, no, it can't be, because it is no more. So then the moon rise, and then so okay, yes, okay, it's glorious, beautiful, and then okay, no, the moon is also the stars and the mountains and the fire, and exploring everything, and trying to understand. For me and for all, okay, other Muslims also, he was a prophet, he must be the ultimate thing. But when he was starting, he was trying everything and failing. So no problem. When you try something new, of
Interesting.
course it is going to happen. I'm just
Yeah.
sharing for that purpose, that in this lineage, someone at some point was really trying and exploring by eating, chewing on different leaves, different herbs, different mushrooms, and everything.
Right. Right.
Sometimes it would be working, sometimes not. It was a
Right.
hit and run method. Yes. So, and they were also human beings like us, like you and me. Yes, with all due respect to all of them, because they were exploring things and making our life easy. Now here I am sitting in Pakistan, in Karachi, and reading about, of course, thanks to Carlos also, because he shared that, and reading his works about Don Juan, and having an intent to connect with Don Juan and understanding what they were sharing. Isn't it so profound, a big, huge privilege for me? They are making so much easy for me by sharing
Yeah.
all these alternate realities, existence of alternate realities. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much.
All right. Let's continue our reading on book 3 in introduction. Right. Uh,
Yes, you are going to read,
eh,
sir.
all right. All right. So we at this point about stopping the world, and there's this. Carlos says he's got a friend who's got a child who's a very difficult child, and Don Juan says, well, the child needs to be stopped. Yeah. And Carlos doesn't understand at first, and he's relating the story because this this led to him understanding what Don Juan meant by stopping the world. And Don Juan had been saying this for ages, but he never Carlos didn't understand this. I mean, ages, we're talking about years and years, and he didn't get it until this story came much later. And this is one of the reasons why, in Way of Impeccability, the life change and self change program that is core and fundamental to Moreness-Culture, which is everything we do, why, in Way of Impeccability, we have repeat backs. If Don Juan had instituted repeat backs, and when he had said the very first time he talked about stopping the world, and he said to Carlos, what do you understand by stopping the world? Repeat back what I just explained about stopping the world. Carlos would have said what he thought it meant, which, no, that's not what I mean. Let's try it again. See? And then Carlos would have realized that he is not understanding. But because he didn't express that he doesn't understand, he didn't raise any objection and say, could you explain that again? I don't get it. He just made up his mind inside his own brain that he understands, where he didn't. It led to years and years of this miscommunication, misunderstanding. It's really terrible, right? So he's talking about this, and now Don Juan, we're going over the story of the child, right? And we started yesterday, but we're going to repeat this, right? And Don Juan says, your friend certainly does have a problem. And Don Juan said, laughing, I wanted to keep on telling him all the terrible things the child had done, terrible in inverted commas, but he interrupted me. There is no need to say any more about that poor little boy. There is no need for you or for me to record his actions in our thoughts one way or another. Very put. His manner was abrupt and his tone was firm, but then he smiled. What can my friend do? I asked. The worst thing he could do is force that child to agree with him. What do you mean? I mean that the child shouldn't be spanked or scared by his father when he doesn't behave the way he wants him to. How can he teach him anything if he isn't firm with him? Your friend should let someone else spank the child. He can't let anyone else touch his little boy? I said, surprised at his suggestion. Surprised and outraged, I would add there, just, knowing Carlos, right? This is outrageous thought for him. And just for society and convention in general. Today, it's even more outrageous because today, spanking a child is considered crazy and that wild, right? And yes, while personally, this was my upbringing, and I don't think it's necessary. I always as appropriate. If you're resorting to violence, you are teaching your child, well, when you can't communicate, use violence. Not a very good message, right? So you need to find other ways. But anyway, you can't let anyone else touch his little boy, I said, surprised at his suggestion. Don Juan seemed to enjoy my reaction and giggled. Your friend is not a warrior. If he were, he would know that the worst thing one can do is to confront human beings bluntly. What does a warrior do, Don Juan? First time that Carlos really asks this question, right? What does a warrior do? Because this is fairly late in a association already. A warrior proceeds strategically. I still don't understand what you mean. I mean that if your friend were a warrior, he would help his child to stop the world. Stop the world in italics, right? And we put that in all caps with hyphens, put it in our dictionary of power, part of Way of Impeccability and Moreness-Culture. What about dictionary of power? Anyway, how can my friend do that? He would need personal power. He would need to be a sorcerer. But he isn't. Or a person of knowledge is a better term here than sorcerer. But he isn't. In that case, he must use ordinary means to help his son to change his idea of the world. It is not stopping the world, but it will work just the same. I asked him to explain his statements. If I were your friend, Don Juan said, I would start by hiring someone to spank the little guy. I would go to Skid Row and hire the worst-looking man I could find. To scare the little boy? Not just to scare the little boy, you fool. That little fellow must be stopped, and being beaten by his father won't do it. If one wants to stop our fellow persons, one must always be outside the circle that presses them. That way, One can always direct the pressure. The idea was preposterous, but somehow it was appealing to me. You see, here's where I get the outrage from, that he's preposterous. Don Juan was
Yes.
resting his chin on his left palm. His left arm was propped against his chest on a wooden box that served as a low table. His eyes were closed, but his eyeballs moved. I felt he was looking at me through his closed eyelids. The thought scared me. Why? Why would somebody looking at you, wouldn't you be excited? For me, I'd be excited if this was possible. It's like, wow, cool. I never understand this. I see it in movies and TV and books all the time. Whenever people encounter something like this, they're like always scared first. Come on, man. Be interested, if nothing else, if not excited. Be intrigued. It really bothers me, this default to being scared. Because I saw it in my parents, well, my mother in particular, and in my siblings, and in my friends, and in people around me, and their parents also. The same thing, and how it limits, and how this one thing, this as a default, this defaulting to being scared without investigating, without even knowing what it's about, for no reason. You're just scared because you don't know how this absolutely closes one to any path to moreness or through moreness. It's unbelievable, right? It's really, really, if there's one thing that we need to learn to change, it's this. And I don't mean to be reckless or thoughtless or careless or uncautious. No, but be scared for a good reason, not just the reason that you don't know. Was anything happening? Don Juan he already knows Don Juan in this context. He trusts Don Juan. Why on earth? Give me one good reason, Carlos. Just one good reason why you are scared. I'll tell you why you're scared, Carlos, because of your stupid, crappy, idiotic, foolish ego. Because now Don Juan could be watching you with his eyes closed, and you don't know that he's watching you, and he may catch you out of being stupid and foolish when you don't. That's what's the fear in your mind, that he's going to see you doing things that you shouldn't be doing. Do you really do things that you shouldn't be doing when Don Juan isn't around? Well, that's not living impeccably. Don't do things that you shouldn't be doing. Then you wouldn't have this fear. Right? Am I being unfair to Carlos, Beena?
A bit harsh, like so many.
No, but you have to be.
Like what?
Tell me, have to be.
Stupid, foolish, blah, 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 blah.
Well, in this instance, he's afraid of this thing for absolutely no good reason. There's not one single good reason that he needs to be afraid. I mean, if he thinks about it, he trusts Don Juan. Just because Don Juan can see through his eyelids and see you, like, why would this scare you? There's no reason for it. Only reason is his ego, that he can't now act, feel secure that when Don Juan is lying there with his eyes closed, he might not be watching him. It's just, but he doesn't actually do that stuff when Don Juan isn't around. I mean, he's near Don Juan. Don Juan could open his eyes at any moment. Say, it's just a unreasonable fear. And we need to unhook from this default unreasonableness. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to stay in your animal brain, in your lizard brain. Yeah. And I saw this with people. They could not evolve because of this one thing. Yeah. They could not grow. They could not learn because of this one thing. Anyway, let's continue. Very big point. Very big point. Tell me more about what my friend should do with his little boy. Tell him to go to Skid Row and very carefully select an ugly-looking derelict. Tell him to get a young one who still has some strength left in him. I have no idea where Skid Row is, and I don't know, and at least where I am, I don't know if where derelicts hang out. Back in the day, okay, I did know in other places I've lived, but I don't know if this is so much anymore, at least here where I'm at, I suppose so, but, it's something that's from a past eras, right? I don't think this is so much common anymore. But anyway, Don Juan then delineated a strange strategy. I was to instruct my friend to have the man follow him or wait for him at the place where he would go with his son. Man, in response to a prearranged cue to be given after an objectionable behavior on the part of the child, was supposed to leap from a hiding place, pick the child up, and spank the living daylights out of him. After the man scares him, your friend must help the boy regain his confidence in any way he can. If he follows this procedure 3 or 4 times, I assure you that that child will feel differently towards everything. He will change his idea of the world. Yeah. And when we think of this just from a conditioning point of view, association management, which is what conditioning is, right? Now you are getting objectionable behavior to be associated with a random, out of the blue, horrible consequence. That's why it says 3 or 4 times, because the first time you might not see the pattern yet. But once you do, now you realize, wow, if I behave really ridiculously, really horrible things could happen. Made that association. Okay? Now, there's merit to this idea, but there's more to it. Let's keep going. What if the fright injures him? Fright never injures anybody. What injures the spirit is having someone always on your back, beating you, telling you what to do and what not to do. Yeah, always that. Shoot this, shoot that, don't do this, don't do that, whatever. Like, come on, man, really. Yeah. When the boy is more contained, you must tell your friend to do one last thing for him. He must find some way to get to a dead child. Oh, being a doctor. What a pity. Perhaps in a hospital or at the office of a doctor. He must take his son there and show the dead child to him. He must let him touch the corpse once with his left hand on any place except the corpse's belly. After the boy does that, he will be renewed. The world will never be the same for him. I realized then that throughout the years of our association, Don Juan had been employing with me, although on a different scale, the same tactics he was suggesting my friend should use with his son. I asked him about it. He said that he had been trying all along to teach me how to stop the world. You haven't yet, he said, smiling. Nothing seems to work because you are very stubborn. If you were less stubborn, however, by now you would probably have stopped the world with any of the techniques I have taught you. What techniques, Don Juan? Everything I have told you to do was a technique for stopping the world. Everything I have told you to do was a technique for stopping. Yeah, yeah. It's just, yeah. It's really, yeah, very powerful. And I'm going to add this into my quote file. Right? The quote file from that of from the Carlos works. Right? I mean, I have my own quote file, which is part of Way of Impeccability. One of the sessions, one of the techniques, one of the tools is learning to quote yourself. In other words, learning to think in a way when you express yourself, it's quotable. No matter that other people quote you for yourself. Why? Because it's a way to condense your thinking, to have it be connected to the pertinent thing, or a way to stay in it where you can use it and have it be a part of you. Right? And most quotes or good quotes are memorable. They're not just memorable, but there's a poeticness to them. There's a moreness to them. There's a usability to them. They stay with you, right? And they become a part of you. And when those are your quotes, doesn't matter if it's somebody else said it originally, when you make it your own, that's the power. See, it becomes yours. Very, very powerful. So this whole point, is a big deal here, and that's why I put it in there. And you learn to make it your own. But anyway, so everything I have told you to do was a technique for stopping the world, and this is a big revelation, right? Because keep in mind, we're in book 3, but this is 10 years into their association. However, now we are going to go back to the beginning. And Carlos is going to relook at all of these things that Don Juan was sharing with him. which are all techniques for stopping the world. A few months after that conversation, Don Juan accomplished what he had set out to do, teach me to stop the world. That monumental event in my life compelled me to re-examine in detail my work of 10 years. It became evident to me that my original assumption about the role of psychotropic plants was erroneous. Joseph, please pay attention. Right? It became evident to me that my original assumption about the role of psychotropic plants was erroneous. They were not the essential feature of the sorcerer's description of the world, but were only an aid to cement, so to speak, parts of the description which I had been incapable of perceiving otherwise. It's absolutely crucial. Yeah, I am inordinately thankful that all my efforts before I came to Carlos and Don Juan enabled me to be aware of this from page 1, book 1, page 1. I was aware of this, not the key feature, and it helped me inordinately. You know, when I first pulled quotes from the books, because I had been doing this with other books, right? To build my own learning, not for the purposes of memory and remembering, but for the purposes of building myself. When I read the first book, I think I had like a half a dozen things that I pulled from. Certainly 10 or less at most. It's very few. I remember that. I was quite surprised. But those few were enough to hook me to read the rest, because by implication, I said, man, this is really potent. And if you have this, then there's more. Because remember, this was at the tail end of reading all the classics. And I other than from the Buddhist writings, most of the classics, there's nothing there. There was nothing there from a utilitarian point of view. Practical application, lots of interesting stuff, yeah, but interesting isn't enough to change your life. Yeah, you have to be able to use it. I mean, I love Nietzsche, but when it came to actually changing your life, practical, didn't matter. Right? Didn't matter. Right. So let me read this again. That monumental. This is what Carlos finally stopped. Was stopped his world, and then this monumental event in my life, stopping the world, compelled me to re-examine in detail my work of 10 years. It became evident to me that my original assumption about the role of psychotropic plants was erroneous. They were not the essential feature of the sorcerer's description of the world, but were only an aid to cement, so to speak, parts of the description which I had been incapable of perceiving otherwise. My insistence on holding to my standard version of reality rendered me almost deaf and blind to Don Juan's aims. Therefore, it was simply my lack of sensitivity which had fostered their use. Therefore, it was simply my lack of sensitivity which had fostered their use. In reviewing the totality of my field notes, I became aware that Don Juan had given me the bulk of the new description at the very beginning of our association, in what he called techniques for stopping the world. I had discarded those parts of my field notes in my earlier works because they did not pertain to the use of psychotropic plants. This is precisely why I have repeatedly, since the beginning of our capital R reading of Carlos's works, I have emphasized repeatedly it's not about the psychotropic plants, because if you have this idea it is about that, you end up in the same problem that Carlos has. You start to view that as the focus, and you de-emphasize and ignore what really is important. Likewise, if you think it's about sorcery, the same thing is going to happen, right? It is about ultimate personal freedom, and it is about character development. This is what it's for, right? I have now rightfully reinstated them in the total scope of Don Juan's teachings, and they comprise the first 17 chapters of this work. The last 3 chapters are the field notes covering the events that culminated in my stopping the world. Right? So he's telling us that in this book, the first section, the first 17 chapters, are about a recap of all the techniques for stopping the world that he'd missed in the 10 years of the association, and the last 3 chapters are about where he's currently at. What is led him to the point of where he's at now, right? In summing up, I can say that I began the apprenticeship. When I began the apprenticeship, there was another reality. That is to say, there was a sorcery description of the world which I did not know. And again, let's understand. There was an alternate description. Again, Carlos is making this mistake of mentality of opposites, either or. There's reality and then there's the opposite, which is the sorcerer's description. Despite Don Juan having told him there are multiple descriptions of the world, right? He's again falling into this trap. So we have to sharpen our awareness, sharpen our thinking, have the ability to discern. Yeah? That's why ADU, awareness, discernment, understanding. You have to have those in place before you can apply. Otherwise, you miss the game, you miss the picture, like Carlos, right? So again, sorcery is not the only alternate reality. There are many others that have nothing to do with sorcery, right? Uh, this is very, very important. Yes. In summing up, I can say that when I began the apprenticeship, there were, and I'm going to read it appropriately, there were other realities. That is to say, that the sorcerer's description was one of those realities, and which I did not know. Right? That would be a more accurate way of stating this, because the way it's written now, if you don't remember, Don Juan said there are multiple realities. It implies through the way it's written that there's regular reality and sorcerer's reality, which is not so. Okay? Don Juan, as a sorcerer and a teacher, taught me that description. The 10-year apprenticeship I have undergone consisted, therefore, in setting up that unknown reality by unfolding its description, adding increasingly more complex parts as I went along. Now, this is accurate, but the implication is not accurate, right? Don Juan showed Carlos the one of the many alternate realities, the sorcerer reality, because it's a reality that he is very intimately familiar with, and he could easily show Carlos. The purpose was to show Carlos simply that there are other realities, not that there's this reality and the one other one, which is the source reality. No, that there are many others, but the other ones are difficult for him to show Carlos. This one is easy for him to show, or relatively so, right? So this is a very, very key and critical and important point to be aware of, right? It's not either or. This is mentality of opposites, which assumes that if something's not black, it must be white. If something's not white, it must be black. Seriously, where are all the colors? Never mind forgetting about gray. Yeah. Most people who have this black and white thinking live in a gray world, sadly. Right? They say, well, it's a combination of the two and that's gray. Yeah, but what about the colors? They miss out on all the glorious colors. This is Moreness-Living. This is what Moreness is all about. Moreness is about understanding that once we break free of such limiting thinking, such limiting mentality, such limiting ways of being, right, ways of living, we get to live in color, full color, all of color, technicolor, magic. This is just incredible. I mean, it's a very big difference, very, very big difference, right? And color, I don't mean it literally, of course, I mean it figuratively. Yes. When your perceptions are limited by either or, oh man, how limited is your world? You miss out on the marks, right? We don't want to miss out on the marks. Very, very important. Right? All right, let's continue. Don Juan, as a sorcerer and a teacher, taught me that description, one of many. The 10-year apprenticeship I have undergone consisted, therefore, in setting up that unknown reality by unfolding its description, adding increasingly more complex parts as I went along. Again, see how Carlos is still in this mindset of either or. All of his writing it gives us the impression that this is the only other alternative reality. Yeah, I mean, he's writing it in this way. I have to really kind of make a lot of point to say, man, to go against Carlos's writing, which he should know better, but he's still stuck in this, right? And we have to. This is why we do capital R readings, so that we don't read what's written. If we read what's written, we get the wrong idea. Right? Even though Carlos has himself earlier written that Don Juan said there are many different realities. He forgets that. Even though he's actually written it, he forgets it. And he's writing as if there are only two realities. They are not. They are not only two. Yeah. I have undergone the 10-year apprenticeship I have undergone consisted, therefore, in setting up that unknown reality by unfolding its description, adding increasingly more complex parts as I went along. The termination of the apprenticeship meant that I had learned a new description of the world, a new description, one of many, in a convincing and authentic manner, and thus I had become capable of eliciting a new perception of the world which matched its new description. In other words, I gained membership. Ah, Carlos's insecurity coming into the issue. Don Juan stated that in order to arrive at perceiving, one first had to stop the world. Stopping the world was indeed an appropriate rendition of certain states of awareness, in which the reality of everyday life is altered because the flow of interpretation, which ordinarily runs uninterruptedly, has been stopped by a set of circumstances alien to that flow. My case, a set of circumstances alien to my normal flow of interpretations, was the sorcery description of the world. Don Juan's precondition for stopping the world was that one had to be convinced, in other words, one had to learn the new description in a total sense for the purpose of putting it against the old one, and that way break the dogmatic certainty which we all share that the validity of our perceptions, our reality of the world, is not to be questioned. When I grew up, and still I see this as common part of superiority paradigm culture, the 11th commandment is, thou shalt not question. When I was a kid, this was really a big deal. Yeah, I mean, it was specifically said too, you know, uh, in a sense, not that don't ask questions, but don't question, which is a very different thing. Yes, asking questions is okay. It all depends on what you're asking about. Don't question the status quo. Don't question beliefs. Don't question the habits, the mindsets, the defaults. Don't question the assumptions. Yeah. Don't question the superiority paradigm, in other words, right? Don't question authority, etc. Right? There's a difference to not asking questions and not questioning. Yeah? To question typically implies you are you are butting up against the status quo. Yeah, and you say, but why are you doing this? Like, what's behind it? Now, that do not do that. Yeah, I mean, in my case, you would literally end up with getting beat, getting hidings, very severe punishments. Yeah? No, not a good idea. Right? No, it was physically dangerous, in other words. Yeah? And also, not only to beat this out of you, which happened for some kids who rebelled against the system and they lived miserable lives, but also being alienated, yeah? being outcast. Very powerful stuff. Anyhow, is not to be questioned. After stopping the world, the next step was perceiving. By that, Don Juan meant what I would like to categorize as responding to the perceptual solicitations of the world outside the description we have learned to call reality. Right? And perceiving here, I call it perceiving energy directly. Because it's no good just perceiving another description. You're still not getting to the essence of it. Yes, there are times like the sorcery description where you're perceiving things through the filter and lens of sorcery and you see the sorcery world, but it's still simply an alternate interpretation of raw energy itself. When you take capital P perceiving, you want to perceive the raw energy itself, and from there, interpret it as needed. Yeah, see, very powerful. I have my own term for this. That when we get to that point of perceiving raw energy and we are able to interpret according to whichever reality suits us, we are then living in what I call fluid reality. Very powerful term. Because reality at that point is fluid. Our reality is very fixed. Yeah. But when you are able to reinterpret the energy whichever way you want, well, then reality is fluid. And you understand that reality is fluid. We believe reality to be fixed. It's what reality means. The very opposite. All right. My contention is that all these steps can only be understood in terms of the description to which they belong. And since it was a description that endeavored to give me from the beginning, I must then let his teachings be the only source of entrance into it. Thus, I have left Don Juan's words to speak for themselves. All right, so here we get to part one, stopping the world, and we'll continue with this tomorrow. Yes, I want this to be, Beena to be, but it's also just a good place. It's a pity Beena dropped there. Today was just a very difficult day, technically, technologically also. Sometimes it just goes that way. But I want to go over this with with uh, with Beena also before we continue. It's very important. But again, it's not that critical because Beena already knows this point. She already understands. So this is very important for anybody. This introduction and this last part of this introduction here, for anybody reading the Carlos works, it's very important to understand that whatever you thought the idea of that you got from Carlos about what it was all about in books 1 and 2, all wrong. It's not all about the psychotropic drugs, power plants, etc. That's not what Don Juan is all about. It's not all about sorcery either. Okay, two very key important points. And we're going to now see, we're going to start to get an idea of what it is actually all about, what Don Juan is all about. And what Don Juan is going to be sharing transcends any cultural limitations, any perception limitations, any paradigm limitations, yes, that we typically have, right? We have to find a paradigm, a new conception for it. And this is why conceptuality is so important. If you are not able to create, to conceive of the new conception, you are not going to be able to proceed. Okay? Very important. Very important. Our ability to conceive is very, very important. It's an ability we have to learn and train, and we can start doing it with little things. Yeah. And then take it further. Ultimately, stopping the world is your brain conceiving of things completely differently to what you're aware of. Completely, right? Still have to have that conception. Very, very powerful, very important. All right. Let me just check and see. Anybody to say hello to on IG? Nobody today. It's just a weird day. I don't even know if we are live there. It says in live video. Very good. All right. Bye bye, everybody. We will continue with um, chapter one. Chapter one, which part one, and then chapter one. So the third book is divided into two parts. And in part one, chapter one, it is reaffirmations from the world around us. And this is elementary attunement. Carlos doesn't quite get it because his conceptuality is very immature or very basic, very primitive. Right? Doesn't have conceptuality developed. But anyway, it's a start. It's a start. It's a start. Yeah, it's a start. All right, very cool. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.